And we are live, just waiting for our audience, and I think Beth at least to come in. That's a phone. Oh, that is, it looks like that was, I was going to move them over or unmute them. It looks like that might have been Beth by the number, but they disappeared. Oh, there she is. Okay. Hi, Beth, are you with us?
I am. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, great. No, I just wanted to make sure you're connected.
Yep.
Just so you know, it is for some reason not pulling from the owl right now. It's pulling from my laptop. So maybe if you talk loud. I don't know. Yeah. Beth, apologies. We're speaking through my laptop. I realize this is a short meeting, but
Okay.
my laptop because the owl is not providing audio. So
Okay, I can hear you fine.
yes.
Okay, this is the planning board meeting for September 20th, 2023. I will begin with a roll call. Alden Clark. Here. Beth Delisle.
Here.
Bob Cope.
Here.
Jamie Pennington. Here. Rick Tainter. Here. Heather Rogers and Charlie Palmisano are not going to be here tonight. And we have a new associate member, Brian Balcom, who was intending to come, but is not able to come after all. And we also have another new associate member, Jen Bluestein, who I'm not sure.
I don't think it's been sworn in yet.
Sworn
Yeah, but we have reached out.
We'll meet both of them at our next meeting. So we have a very short agenda tonight. We have a public hearing on the application for Lower Atkinson Common. We have a discussion of the CPC representative, approval of minutes for 2 meetings, and any other updates. So I will begin first with the public hearings for City of Newburyport, 388 High Street, also known as 447 Merrimack Street, Lower Atkinson Common. There's on the agenda is an application completeness vote, a request for waivers, and site plan review. It's been continued since September 6th, and there is, as I understand, a request to further continue to November
15th.
So could I have a motion to continue this application to November 15th?
We'll continue that application to November 15th.
Motion by Alden, is there a second? Second by Bob. We need to do a roll call vote. So Alden.
Yes.
Beth.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Jamie.
Yes.
And I vote yes also, so unanimous vote to continue that application. That is the end of the public hearings. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve. First set is August 16th, 2023, which was a fairly long meeting. I have sent in some corrections to Caitlin. Are there any other corrections or changes or additions that anybody wanted to make?
I sent something in.
You sent something as well. If that's the case, then could I have a motion to approve the draft minutes as amended by the members?
I'll move to approve the 8/16 minutes as amended.
Okay, Alden, is there a second? Bob seconds. Again, a roll call vote. Alden?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I vote yes also. And then we have the minutes of September 6th, which was a very short meeting. I only have one change on it. I think there's the change YMCA to YWCA. I assume nobody else.
I missed that.
You missed that. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes without one correction?
I'll move to approve the 9/6 minutes with one correction.
Motion by Alden, is there a second?
Okay.
Bob seconds. Okay, roll call vote, Alden,
Yes.
Jeff,
I'll abstain because I wasn't there.
okay, Bob,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
and I vote yes also, so the minutes are approved. Which leaves us with two items on the agenda. One is CPC representative, if we wish to discuss.
I'm assuming we'll carry that.
We'll carry that on,
Okay.
okay? And any other updates?
Let me just ask, do the board members in the context of our continuation short meeting, do you want me to give an update on just a couple of quick things, or
Yes,
do you,
please.
I can also hold off? Okay,
So, please
okay.
give an update.
Just real briefly, the planning assist, I just want to make sure I was up to speed. We got a planning assistance grant that I applied for a couple months back. This is just to do an analysis, a study of the Story Avenue area and try to bring forward a zoning amendment that will help us to do what's indicated on the here, which is a focus of a rezoning study in that zoning district, which is our business district up there. Something akin, I would say, to our 40R district, where it allows multifamily and mixed use, has a design review process. We have to talk through some other parameters, but to allow it to be converted to more of a village, center or node of the city, as opposed to just, strip mall sort of commercial area only. So at any rate, this grant is meant to help that with some tools. I would also welcome feedback from you if you want to reach out to me, between meetings would be great in the next week or two, just reach out. Would love your thoughts on, parameters from the 40R district that are appropriate, any things you want, tweaked or that sort of thing. Just thinking about what sort of forms would be created. There's other parameters, other provisions from many other communities, design standards or otherwise, that could be utilized, things like parking ratios, all that. So Rick, I know we'll talk about it, but if others want to chime in on that, we are looking to change the area of that area via the zoning. It'll take a long time for that evolution to happen, but at least the zoning will set the stage for that transition. And this grant would help with that. Separate from that entirely. Yeah.
Three questions. One, what was the amount of the grant?
Sorry.
Two, okay, great.
Sorry, that was only 50,000. I had indicated a couple of things, typically a sort of confirmation of water sewer capacities there, given the other build out. I think we have to think about that collectively. Any build out the city based on our millions of gallons per day withdrawal allowance, and the feasible allowance even. And then the zoning end of it itself, if we're using consultant services, and then I do think some 3D sort of renderings of some type will be helpful to illustrate what this area can become. I think there are some good ones. Even just as a quick reference, there were one or two sort of pencil drawing type sketches in the old TOD, transit oriented development study of where is now our 40R district. There were some good renderings to show what that area could look like, and so I think something akin to that, or it doesn't have to be an involved sort of 3D model with a lot of detail, but I think it can help to illustrate the improvements that we'll see there, and the walkability and the sort of vibrancy that might come with that. And I think what it will represent is that this is more akin to what we have in sort of downtown Newburyport and what we're trying to do in the 40R district, and I think we can also accomplish some of that here. So.
And so, when does the money have to be spent by?
By June 30th of next year. Yeah, and we're actually we might be having some more expedited discussion of this area for some other reasons. I don't bother you with all the details and the minutia, but we may want to look at this area in a faster track for various reasons. One of it's just to try to create more affordable housing that, in the community. So at any rate, we may have more discussion in the coming weeks or months, faster track than even say, early spring, even, of next year. I may be looking to have a more expedited discussion with you about this, and I'm glad you asked.
My third question was, you mentioned consultant. Are you going to be, you have a time frame for when you're going to be looking for consultants and putting together a scope of work? Or...
Yeah, I would say a couple weeks out, I will definitely be reaching out. So if you have any suggestions, if you wanted to participate in that discussion, let me know.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Okay.
And again, I know in you in particular, if you have any suggestions on particular consultants for some of the stuff, definitely would love to talk about that too. Okay. And part of the reason I mentioned the 40R district is just because we have, it's something, there's a million different variations, and there's plenty of other things to pull from other communities and other examples and, provisions we can pull. But here we have done that. So we understand how the permitting process works. It has a design review component, which I think is key for us to maintain in some way for this area. I wouldn't want to, have it be as of right multifamily with no kind of design review process or no kind of massing considerations, that kind of thing. So having some basic parameters and thinking about how we might massage some of those could get us a very similar sort of as of right, expedited permitting process for some of what we want and, need to have in that area going forward, but still have some, control to make sure things are connected for pedestrians and bicycles, and, the buildings are appropriately scaled and whatnot. The other thing I would mention, which may have to some degree some sort of overlap in our discussions going forward in the coming months, is just having some informal discussions with folks in the coming weeks and months, but ramping up to a more formal process, probably as we get into the sort of winter season into the new year, more formally into a process, and certainly having, public discussion in more detail about the MBTA communities requirements around the train station and how we propose to fulfill the state's requirements for that, while also being appropriate for Newburyport's needs. So we'll be, Rick and I are working on this all involved. We'll be coming back to you for some information about what the parameters are. I'll do a presentation about what the basic requirements are. We'll flush out a little bit what we think some of our options are. We might give a preferred option or two of what we think is reasonably appropriate, as a starting point, as opposed to, just throwing it out there as what we need to do, actually coming forward with something that we think is viable and appropriate in context and would be consistent with our land use patterns and plans. And then use that as a framework for bringing forward to satisfy the state and also meet simultaneously some of our other needs.
So it looks to me like there's very little on the October 6th agenda at this point. The only thing that I saw was the joint public hearing on the pickleball and stuff.
Yes.
So
Afterwards,
so I think that we could use that meeting for a couple of things. One is I've already given you a sense of what I'd like to see in looking at the business park zone. And so maybe we could use that as a real planning workshop.
that would be great, because we haven't done one like that in a while. Yeah.
So we start focusing on the business park and on the MBTA community stuff.
Yep.
And then maybe start looking at Story Avenue too. I think that would be kind of energizing for the board to start looking at things.
I agree. I agree, because the best approach, obviously, and the reason why the planning boards are inserted in the process is to provide, with the office, of course, we have that role too, but some advanced planning for the zoning changes, as opposed to these sort of haphazard things we might see sponsored for one reason or another. To, some of them are necessary or timely, but to have a more coherent long-term, plan for an area, and to have that consistent with a master plan developed by this board.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
So I think you and I can talk before the next meeting and figure out what the agenda looks like. We can
Sure.
try it. I think that would be
Think about the visuals that we'll. Yeah.
And you're referring to October 4th, Wednesday meeting?
Yes.
4th. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. Okay, let's make sure.
Separate meeting. So we talked about that. There's obviously a relationship there to some degree, partly based on what we're trying to get credit for under the MBTA communities. There's a relationship there to some of the transitional area we talked about between the business park and the 40R district, and maybe some of this, and thinking about the Route 1 corridor and even the Waterfront West area. Just thinking overall, we may think about, we may have a map that's not right, all down by the train station. We might have some other pieces in there. So we will elaborate on that and get into more discussion.
It's very helpful for us all to be thinking, with a common set of concepts and policies and things. As you get into working with the consultant Story Avenue.
Yes.
You get working with the see,
Definitely.
just kind of have it all related together with another separate projects.
Definitely. And some key parameters, and some things are translatable from one district to another, right? Some one type of area to another, or permitting process or things like that. Some things you'd want, to be different. And and the maps are obviously different to some degree, right? We get adapting to the surrounding landscape. So yeah, it would be good to walk through some of that together and know that before we're getting any sort of deliverables from the consultant, if they're preparing something versus something we're preparing or merging together, for the zoning end of it, that we agree generally on those parameters. I wouldn't want to see, a 2.5-year process working on a zoning section and not being able to get to the finish line. So, short-term rental units tomorrow night is being discussed by the city council. I had suggested, I have to check again on where they are, but I had suggested, yes, council chambers. I had suggested also that they try to plan ahead for a couple of other dates, just because we know how difficult it might be to reach consensus on, say, one night, given it's been a while since the council as a body has discussed this. And I think reaching consensus may depend on a full participation or a heavy participation by the councilors, even though it's in committee and committee of the whole, meaning all the councilors can attend. Getting that consensus or understanding what adaptations could be done to the current draft to reach consensus would be best informed by as many counselors participating. So hopefully that meeting tomorrow night will be well participated in, and any future discussions, and hopefully by the deadline, there'll be something brought forward to the council. I'll defer to this. Yes, I think it's the 14th or 15th, something like that of November. Yeah, I forgot the top of my head the exact date, but it's in November. Yeah. So again, I know we've had this discussion before about time frame. We'll have to leave that ball in their court. I can't guarantee we won't have to have another hearing on this sort of subject matter, but hopefully we'll see something.
We have another hearing.
I would imagine, yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, those are the main things I wanted to mention tonight. So yeah, thank you.
I didn't have anything else. Anybody else?
No, I will say, by the way, sorry, on a parting point, because you did mention it. I appreciate, Rick, when you came in, and Bob saying there was an article in the Globe about parking, and just because it does relate back to land use and walkability and patterns and priorities for the city in general, planning priorities, land use policies, and some of those are off of the planning board end of it. They're more sort of, general preferences type things. But I would appreciate, any feedback you have or thoughts you have, pros or cons, irrespective, regardless of the details, because there has been a whole spectrum of decisions that have been made, over time about where to put the garage, how many spaces, what to do on the waterfront, what plan the council approved for that, all these pieces, over time. So there was a lot of discussion recently about what seems to me a collision between the council's plan to reduce the parking on the waterfront, which has been plenty of discussion, as many of you know, has been discussed for years leading up to the point, and then what seems to be a collision with a lot of passes that were given out to commit to both employees and residents at the same time, with passes that could be used anytime. And so I don't know, in terms of the ratios and so forth, as our parking program has been evolving, it's not clear to me whether or not we've essentially sort of, set a trajectory where we've overcommitted with the number of passes with all the customers that are, expected, while also expecting to have those same customers in those spots. And I think, with some of the passes, a lot of those passes, like 440 of them for the employees, for instance, being assigned to that east lot, and then having such a reduction at the time of the park construction, I think caused a little bit of a, concern, very quickly in a very short amount of time about that. So ideally, things would be aligned perfectly for a, perfect trajectory and timeline, but some of those, alignments may be a little bit different, but in general, please, as a land use matter, just understand that for any, because it's been mentioned about new restaurants coming in the downtown and other activities, like the Black Cow, and other things like that. As a land use pattern, there will be next spring 709, according to this is the parking clerk's numbers, 719 spaces downtown in the overall inventory. There were because there was such a controversy raised here about loss of parking for businesses and everybody in downtown, there is a different location clearly with the park, versus the parking garage. And I don't personally believe that to be a very far walk, but it's a street or two over. But that is clearly a policy, debate and a location issue. But to be, for people to have different preferences on, but just to be clear about the numbers, there were 704 by numbers back in 2018, which is before the current construction and before the interim temporary lawn space were put in there to get people used to the idea of a bigger park coming along and move them, to put their cars in the garage. So there are actually going to be more spaces in the overall downtown inventory than we had, a couple of years back in 2018. Than there were, so the idea that somehow this is reducing parking for businesses versus having a different location, which is a fair debate to have, but basically the primary decisions have already been made by the council, which is to put the garage over here and to reduce the parking on the waterfront. That is what the waterfront park, plan called for. So it's not possible to satisfy everybody, but this is the trajectory we've been on. So to the extent it affects any other further land use questions or parking availability downtown and so forth, just so you know the numbers, that's where we are.
Interesting. A friend of mine who I used to work with training at that in the 1970s is on the Needham back now, and she contacted me today after seeing the article.
It's not Terry, is it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Jean McKnight.
Okay. Yep.
She used to be a Copeland Page.
Okay. Yeah.
But she contacted me today after seeing the article, and she was curious because they had a discussion at the Needham Planning Board last night about parking garages and whether people would park in a parking garage.
Right.
And I said, well, my experience is that in enforcement, there are 900 spaces in parking garages, and at least the 600 space garage is often full. And so it's, people do park there. I think it's a matter not of so much of the location or whether people want to park in parking garage, but it's, how the city manages parking spaces generally.
Hmm.
And we have a problem because we provide free parking on the street. So we're guiding people to park on the street. Parking, which is, John Burke's 2018 or whatever report referred to Newburyport's unique parking program. But he's saying our priority is that people park on the street, not in parking lot. But so I think, and the flip side of that is Newburyport has a more seasonal economy downtown. Than Portsmouth does.
Yeah.
Or than Newbury does.
Agreed.
And so, we 5 months out of the year, we might have a parking problem. 7 months of the year, we usually find a space there. So it's, to me, planning the parking for the busiest day is like a
Shopping mall.
for the day after Thanksgiving.
Agreed.
It's just not really good planning. So we have to kind of get that word out somehow, but I think that
Yeah.
and the response was, yes, another part of the discussion, the planning board is our downtown vibrant enough to support moving people up the street. And she said, I hope that there was a reporting.
Those are all great points. I agree. Yeah.
What your report's position is in our seasonal nature.
Agreed. Yeah. Incidentally, and I didn't realize this until I went because I was like, let me just read this article again. See, because some things are captured, accurately, or, you don't capture the whole picture. It's only so much you can capture in it. But it was just interesting. I realized that one of the related links that was suggested on that page, I hadn't noticed until now, was this is another community, Belmont Hill, says the school literally wants to pave paradise to put up a parking lot. So we have this inverse discussion in another community, essentially, simultaneously with this one here, so anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'm really not personally unilaterally removing hundreds of parking lots overnight or something.
Yeah. I'm like, please don't blame the messenger. I'm just trying to get these projects done as already called for, it's so, yeah.
As we talked about, 15 years ago, because we don't.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
Anything happening with the mall?
The mail, yeah, I mean, to my knowledge, so basically we didn't get any bids, yeah, and I don't know what that time frame is on that now. I'd have to defer to Kim. I would imagine there'd be an attempt to come back, with maybe with a new package and whatnot, but try to get out there and try to see if next year could be used for the construction, meaning, expediting in the coming weeks or months, a bid and whatever tweaks need to be done on that spectrum, and discuss the rest of it with the council.
In the meantime, is there an opportunity to get together with the engineering team and try to come up with what we think is the best?
I would be more than happy to participate in any meetings or discussions and reach out and suggest. I don't know. I'd have to defer to the project folks about that, but yeah. Yeah. I don't disagree. I assume, at least from the exercise we went through here in permitting, that the next bid package would have at least, more detail on the structure, right? To your earlier point. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm happy to participate in any discussions. We just like Atkinson, we reached out and said, we have a prep discussion of any kind to kind of work through some issues that are clearly going to be relevant for the board's review. We can circle back.
How would we push that?
Well, I'll reach out to Kim, but if you want to, reach out as well, and maybe if you want, and it depends on what your context is. Is it informal, sort of, a couple folks coming in City Hall? I would reach out to Kim because she's the one managing that project and knows. Yeah.
And as always, I would love to talk to her about that.
Yes, and I will circle back. Caitlin and I have both asked about that. She did actually have she had to take a little bit of time for her family. She had a loss, unfortunately. So that was part of the reason for this continuance. So we wanted to kind of give a little bit of time for her to get back up to speed. But yeah, we will certainly reach back out there. We've been asking for us to do a follow-up to try to get ahead of and deal with, make sure we try to always in the office as best we can, both with our city projects and with private projects, when people avail themselves of the opportunity, we try to, have them come in, suggest, changes or tweaks or things they may want to be aware of or things they want to provide to the board to try to get ahead of issues and avoid problems. Not everybody avails themselves of that opportunity, as you know, but we do try to do that. So we'll try to do that here as well.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn?
Thank you, Alvin, second. Thank you.
All of it.
Moved and seconded, roll call, Alvin,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Bob,
Yeah.
Jamie,
Yes.
and I vote yes, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you all for
Good night.
showing up.
Yep. Good night.
Exciting meeting.